Hello everyone and welcome to another video. When I posted my first tablet video earlier this year, I said I didn't really understand the point of tablets. But that was a high-end device and some people were even upset that I called it a tablet. Then we tested two mid-range tablets, the Lenovo Xiaoxin tablet and the Lenovo Yoga Tab Plus. Those were mainstream tablets and I honestly like those better. And today, we have an entry-level tablet that I paid less than $100 for. So let's check out the Teclast T50 Mini. Also, I'm currently reviewing the OnePlus Pad 3, so please subscribe so you won't miss it. Why did I buy this tablet? In theory, I bought it to watch YouTube and other content and to control my smart devices. In practice though, I bought it because it was cheap. I got it from AliExpress and it was delivered in 6 days, which is a new record for AliExpress. I made the order on September 9th and it got delivered on the 15th. First and foremost, let's see what we get in the box. Aside from the tablet, we get a European charger. The charger is rated at 10 watts, 5 volts, 2 amps, and it has a USB-A plug. Interesting choice. It's also quite light and it feels hollow, so I think it's safe to say that they just went for the cheapest charger available. I still shouldn't complain though, at least it comes with a charger. We also get a USB-C to A cable and it's fairly long. Aside from those and some documentation, we also get an eject tool. Yep, this tablet has cellular connectivity. That's surprising at this point, but honestly that's hardly the only surprise we're gonna get. Now, let's take a look at the tablet. We'll state the obvious first, this tablet is small. Here's a quick comparison between this tablet, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and the OnePlus Pad 3. It's not that much larger than a regular phone, and it's quite a bit smaller than the 13-inch tablets that we have here. I don't mind the form factor though. These flagship tablets are quite hard to operate one-handed, so something like this might be useful to some. You don't need a 13-inch tablet to control your smart devices or to read the news. The build quality is decent. As you would expect, it's all glass in front. It came with a screen protector pre-applied, but there is a bubble on this that I definitely did not fixate on. And it's all metal on the back, which is a nice touch. They went for 2 different colors and 2 different textures on the back. I like this, but to each their own. We also have a dual camera setup on the back, which we'll talk about later in the video. On the bottom, we have the USB-C port as well as the dual speaker setup. And on the right side, we have our lock button, 2 volume buttons, as well as the SIM slot. There is no 3.5mm headphone jack. Removing the SIM tray yields 2 SIM slots, one of which can be used as a microSD slot. The SIM tray was slightly bent, and I only noticed that when I was working on this video. So I fixed this issue by slightly bending it the other way. Setting this tablet up is just like setting any other Android tablet. It makes you connect to a Wi-Fi network, it asks a couple basic questions, and finally, it asks for your Google account. Unlike the Xiaoxin tablet that I made a video about earlier this year, this tablet has Google Play pre-installed. Ultimately, I managed to set up this tablet in less than 10 minutes. Once the tablet was fully set up, I checked for updates, and to my surprise, there was one available. The tablet quickly downloaded the update, but installing it took around 2 hours. This is much longer than what I'm used to, but ultimately it went through, so once again I shouldn't complain. With that, we can move on to the specs. First and foremost, we have a MediaTek Helio G99 processor. This processor came out in 2022 and it has 8 cores. It seems like Teclast, the manufacturer of this tablet, they exclusively use this processor, which is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it's going to make releasing updates easier for them, which means that they're going to release more updates. At the same time, it's a curse because the one processor that they chose to use isn't necessarily amazing. This tablet is advertised to have up to 20GB of RAM. For comparison, the fully loaded Galaxy Z Fold 7 has 16GB of RAM. This is impressive and not exactly the truth. In reality, this tablet has 8GB of RAM. It also has 12GB of swap memory, totaling in 20GB. So this tablet uses some of its internal storage as RAM memory, and this is something that pretty much all devices do. So this isn't an extra feature, and I certainly wouldn't call this tablet to have 20GB of RAM. Anyways, we also have 128GB of internal storage. The speed or the standard isn't mentioned, so we'll be testing this out later in the video. In terms of connectivity, we have Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 5.2. These are far from the latest and greatest, but in reality, they are perfectly serviceable. I also wouldn't expect a tablet that has a processor from 2022 to have Wi-Fi 7 or Bluetooth 6.0. And even outside all that, at this price point, it's understandable. As I mentioned earlier, this tablet has LTE as well. This isn't a China-only tablet, so this is a global tablet, so it supports a fair bit of bands, but you should still check with your carrier and see if it's supported. I personally tried a card that uses the Rogers network in Canada, and it seems to be working just fine. There is no eSIM support, which isn't surprising. What is surprising though is that this tablet has GPS. I normally don't care for GPS in tablets, but if a tablet has cellular connectivity, it's nice that it also has GPS. We also have a 5100 mAh battery that we'll be testing later in the video. And lastly, we have an 8.7-inch display, and it's a 120Hz panel. These high refresh rate displays are great, and I'm so glad that they're finally making their way into budget tablets. Honestly, this makes perfect sense to me. A high refresh rate screen will make this tablet feel much snappier than it actually is. What's not great is the resolution. At 1340 by 800, this isn't a full HD panel, and it shows. You can count the pixels on the display in most scenarios, and this is the biggest shortcoming of this tablet. I showed this tablet to a friend of mine, and his reaction was, "This tablet is really smooth, but the screen looks quite cheap." It has an aspect ratio of 15 by 9, which means that there will be bars on most YouTube videos. You can zoom in so the video will fill the entire screen, but this is a tablet that will mostly be used for content consumption, so the bars might be an issue. I couldn't find the peak brightness value of this tablet, but it's definitely bright enough for daily use. It doesn't support HDR nor Dolby Vision, but once again, that's understandable. The color accuracy is fine. It's not the most accurate display in the world, but it's good enough for news, content consumption, and light gaming. With that, let's start using this tablet. This tablet comes pre-installed with Android 15 and there is no bloat. There are 3 apps in the app drawer that you normally wouldn't see on an Android device: SIM Toolkit, System Update, and User Center. I assume that the SIM Toolkit is to change certain SIM settings, but on this tablet it doesn't work. System Update checks for updates, but I can do this in settings anyway, so I'm not sure why there's a standalone app. And lastly, User Center is there so you can send feedback. Either way, I wouldn't call these bloat. Using this tablet for daily tasks is not a problem at all. I've been using this tablet for some basic web browsing every day, and I haven't noticed any slowdowns or crashes. The tablet came with Chrome pre-installed, and its homepage was set to the Teclast website. I'm not entirely sure why they did this, especially because you can't order anything from their website. Also, this is something that I haven't seen in a long time, and I just found it to be funny. The interface is interesting. It's not gesture-based, instead you have the regular buttons to go back, go home, and open the app switcher. There are also some shortcuts on the bottom. These buttons and shortcuts are constantly there even when you have other apps open, and they're prone to be accidentally clicked. Downloading and installing apps doesn't take any longer than it would on a regular Android device. This was an issue that I had with the older Teclast tablet that I had, but to be fair, that one had a much worse processor. The Helio G99 seems to be doing well in daily tasks. The low resolution screen, which happens not to be full HD, is not an issue either. I've done some web browsing, and I've also used this tablet for some daily tasks, and it seems to be doing well. The UI scales well for the most part, so you don't end up counting the pixels. The only place where I found a scaling issue was in settings, and especially the settings screen in portrait mode. Because we have this divided setup, it's hard to read what's on the left side, and there is very little space left for whatever setting you're in. So they've definitely developed this for a larger screen with a higher resolution, and when they used the same software for this, it didn't work. I don't think this tablet deserves a divided setup for settings. You can fix this by changing the scale so the font is smaller, but then you can really count the pixels. Either way, this isn't something you're gonna do all the time. You're not gonna open up settings for fun every day, so it's not gonna bother you. Watching content from YouTube or Netflix works well too. This isn't surprising from a performance perspective since we don't have a 1080p screen. Therefore, for the most part, whatever it is you're watching will default to 720p. But even when you manually set it to 1080p, you won't come across any issues. Speaking of 1080p, this tablet does have the Widevine L1 certification, so you can technically watch 1080p Netflix. That's not gonna do any good in this case since we don't have a 1080p screen, but this is still nice to have. I mentioned earlier that all Teclast tablets have the same processor, and I'm pretty sure that this is gonna make ROM development much easier. But this solution, the one-size-fits-all approach, might not work in all cases. The UI issue in settings was one example to this. Another example is the FM radio. So this tablet has FM radio and you see the app on the app drawer. You open it and it tells you to plug in headphones. This is normal since most phones that have FM radio require that you plug your headphones in. However, since this tablet doesn't have a headphone jack, I didn't know what to do at first. I then plugged in USB-C headphones because that's the next best solution, and guess what? It still didn't work. I even went a step further. I connected a USB-C hub with a 3.5mm headphone jack, and that didn't work either. So I'm pretty sure that the FM radio app looks for the headphone jack and whether there's something connected to it. But since there's no headphone jack to begin with, this app is never gonna work. Interesting, not a big deal at all, but it just shows you the intricacies of software development. When I made a video about the Lenovo Yoga tab, I mentioned a couple quality of life features such as the one-time rotation thing and the extended unlock. This is on me, I thought those were Lenovo specific features. But no, apparently they're Android features now. This tablet, when you turn auto rotation off and then rotate the screen, a little icon will pop up on the screen asking you if you want to rotate. And if you press it, the screen will rotate just once and your auto rotation will still stay off. This is a fantastic feature and I'm so happy that a sub $100 tablet also has it. Similarly, I can use extended unlock, which will keep my tablet unlocked in known, trusted places. For me, that's my home. So if I lock the tablet at home and then press the lock button again, the tablet will automatically unlock. This is especially useful since we don't have a fingerprint reader. I tried Face Unlock and one of the first things that it tells you is that it's not as safe as other methods. This makes sense since this tablet only uses the camera, so it does a 2D scan, and this is something you can easily trick with a photo. So if someone has access to my YouTube videos, and that's everyone, they can just unlock this tablet by playing one of my videos on a screen and holding the tablet against it. Either way, I'm using this since this tablet is most probably never gonna leave home, and I don't wanna put in my password every time. But you can tell that this isn't as safe of a method as putting in your password or a fingerprint, since the tablet asks you for your password whenever you need to do something important. So let's say I want to change the screen timeout, which is a safety feature, I need to put in my password. The face recognition won't work in that case. In my opinion, the face unlock is a pseudo measure at best. It has lift to wake, so you don't have to press the lock button to unlock the tablet, but it doesn't have double tap to wake. This is understandable at this price point, but regardless, I didn't realize that I got used to that feature so much. Every time I use this tablet, instinctively I end up double tapping the screen, and I question myself every time because it doesn't unlock. This is an issue that I also ran into with the iPhone SE 2020. That's another device that I'm currently testing. Regardless, I wouldn't expect a tablet that sells for $100 USD to have tap to wake, so this is understandable. With that, let's check out the cellular connectivity. As I said earlier in the video, I installed the Canadian SIM card that runs on the Rogers network into this tablet. I get 3 to 4 bars of LTE, which is more than what I get on my iPhone. The provider that I'm using, Chatter, they don't offer the best speeds, All I can say about the speeds is that they're no different from the speeds that I would get on my iPhone. For my main line, I have an eSIM and I can't use that on this tablet. You can make and receive calls and you'll use the speaker for that. I really wish you could bring the tablet to your head like this and use it like a regular phone, but unfortunately that's not an option. That would be quite funny though. On a phone call, both parties can hear each other well, and that's pretty much all you can ask for. It also has RCS messaging if you're into that. I mentioned earlier in the video that we have a 51 mAh battery, so let's check out the battery life. I started playing YouTube on one side and had the stopwatch running on the other side. Yes, even at this price point and at this form factor, we get split view. You can have two apps open side by side, but it's not the most useful since the screen is small. Anyways, with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and cellular data enabled with 50% brightness, this tablet lasted 9 hours and 39 minutes. That's quite impressive for such a small battery. For comparison, the Lenovo Xiaoxin tablet lasted 9 hours and the Lenovo Yoga Tab lasted 5. While the battery life is great, the charging curve isn't. I used a fast charger to charge the tablet from 0% to 100% and it charged at around 17 watts. Under those conditions, it took an hour and 33 minutes until the tablet told me that it was fully charged. What's interesting though is that the tablet kept charging at various wattages for another hour and a half. This is interesting behavior, especially when the tablet is shut off. Maybe it was doing some sort of calibration, I don't know. But this happens pretty much every time that I charge the tablet. I didn't try charging with the 10 watt adapter because it has a European plug. But since the tablet normally charges at 17 watts, I would assume that it would take around 2.5 hours for this 10 watt adapter to fully charge the tablet. I honestly don't know who takes photos and videos with their tablet, but let's check out the cameras too. We have a dual camera setup and we know it's great because it's AI. This is advertised as a dual 13 megapixel camera setup, and that's not factual. In reality, even when you check the specs, it tells you that there's a 13 megapixel main camera and a 0.08 megapixel auxiliary camera. For all intents and purposes, a 0.08 megapixel camera is useless. Furthermore, there is no way of using that second camera. I'm not gonna disassemble this camera to see if that camera is real, but either way, treat this as a single camera setup. Who cares if a sub $100 tablet has a dual camera setup? Why even make this claim? Either way, the rear camera is fine if you have to take that occasional photo or the video. It doesn't take the worst photos in the world, and it's definitely good enough for scanning QR codes. The selfie camera is similar, it's definitely good enough for the occasional QR code or the verification selfie. By default, the videos you take with this tablet come with a nostalgia filter, especially at night. They're not good. I don't know what else to say about that. And in case it's not clear, there's nothing AI about this camera setup. We have a dual speaker setup, so let's give it a listen. Okay, so this isn't the best speaker setup in the world, but it gets loud enough and it gets the point across. And with that, we can move on to the benchmarks. We'll start with Antutu. As usual, Antutu is not available on the Play Store, so I downloaded it from their website. This was no issue, I downloaded it and then installed it, and once I ran the benchmark, we got around 550,000 points. This is Antutu 11, so I don't have a comparison chart for you, but if you'd like to compare it to another tablet or another Android device that ran Antutu 11, the results are on the screen. Instead of running more synthetic benchmarks, I ran a 3D Mark stress test. I did this because this is a test that takes around 20 minutes, and the app runs the same benchmark over and over again, and it checks for the variance. This allows us to see if there's any thermal throttling. After running this for 20 minutes, I saw very little run-to-run variance, so I think it's safe to say that this tablet doesn't thermal throttle. Since the storage speed wasn't mentioned in the specs, I wanted to test it out by running cross-platform disk test. In this test, we got around 400 megabytes per second in write speeds and 550 megabytes per second in read speeds. Honestly, this isn't bad at all, and it contributes to the overall smoothness of this tablet. I then ran a speed test to see how well the Wi-Fi works. I have a Wi-Fi 7 network, although this tablet only supports Wi-Fi 5. After a speed test, we get around 280 megabits per second in downloads and 230 in uploads. I have a bunch of devices that support Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 7, and those devices get more than 500 megabits, but regardless, 280 megabits per second is not bad at all for daily tasks. And once again, I've had no issues downloading or installing apps, so the internet speed isn't an issue. This tablet has a USB-C port, so in theory, we could plug an Ethernet adapter in to get faster speeds. This is a USB 2.0 port, so theoretically speaking, we could get a maximum of 480 megabits per second. In reality though, I couldn't get more than 50 megabits per second in downloads and more than 230 in uploads. So if you wanted to use this tablet to download content using an Ethernet adapter, that's not gonna work. I also wanted to check out gaming, although I didn't have high hopes. I started off with EAFC Mobile. In lowest settings, this game is barely playable. I don't have an FPS counter, but I think we're hovering at around 40 FPS. The problem here is that this is a fast-paced game, so it feels like you're always lagging behind. I then tried Call of Duty Mobile to see if it would fare any better. The game defaulted to medium settings, which resulted in a surprisingly playable experience. I haven't noticed any stutters or lags. So gaming on this tablet is an option, just not for all games. Overall, what do I think of the Teclast T50 Mini? This tablet is pretty good for basic daily tasks like web browsing and watching YouTube videos, as well as playing some games. Since it has LTE and GPS, it would also make a decent Uber or DoorDash tablet. Honestly, for that, this is a great option, especially at this price point. On the other hand, the low resolution screen might be an issue for some, and the marketing claims are interesting to say the least. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking this video, checking out my other videos, and subscribing to my channel. Take care.